Okay, we're going back to this. Last time we dealt with the we spoke about the Meiri and a few things. Now let's go look carefully into this further in this idea of tshuva. I'd like to point out another nakuda that we discussed. We pointed out the Meiri is some kind of an idea of dafka of a tshuva because of kabbalas oil malchus shamayim. We saw that in Meiri and specifically on Rosh Hashanah. Well, let's look again. First, when we talk about tshuva, so we have let's learn the psukim in Chumash and source Vav. And the psukim in Chumash say, "Vayai will come to pass ki yavo elecha kol dvarim ha'ela," when all these terrible things which will happen, as we just read, we just see in Parshas Kisavai, habracha va'aklala. That bracha and that klala which I presented in front of you at the beginning of Parshas Re'eh, and this is the idea what we have in Har Grizim, Har Evo, and all the terrible things, all the great things, the baruchs and the klalos, you will take to heart. In all the different exiles between the different nations which God had dispersed you there you finally, after experiencing the terrible godless, you actually took things to heart. You took things to heart. Now, okay, so what happens? V'shavto, and you will return ad until the presence of Yud Kei Vav Kei, Elokecha, God your Lord. It will be at that point of time that you will return to live in presence of the Lord, of God your Lord, due to the fact that you have internalized the pain of exile and the klala of exile, that you take things to heart and you realize that life is meaningless outside of standing in presence of God your Lord. V'shamata b'kolo, finally you will heed to what he has to say. V'shamata b'kolo does not mean to say you will listen to his voice. It means you will heed what he has to say. This is, I told you once, is a Magen Avram and Hilchos Shofar, which brings a Dasa Raviyah, that the bracha and Tkiyas Shofar is not the Shmoya Kol Shofar, but the Shmoya Bikol Shofar. And the Magen Avram says, I doesn't understand. The Shema Bikol means that to listen to what the message, to what it has to say, and the mitzvah is to hear the call of the Shofar, the voice. And the answer is no. The Raviyah understands that the purpose of Shofar, the mitzvah of Shofar, is not to hear the noise, but to listen to the music and understand what it has to tell you. You know, that which we understand, that you have Tkiyas Shofar every morning now, so to speak, to remind you of what's happening. Remind you of what's happening, that we're getting closer than further to basically to good old, to Yom Hadin. And then we're getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and towards Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. And we have to wake up, as the Rambam said in Source Daled, that we have to wake up from our slumber. We read that last 2 weeks ago. So here it said, V'shamata b'kolo, you will heed what he has to say. K'chayil asher anuchim etzavcha hayom. All that which I commanded you today, you will now finally heed to what it says. And what's it saying? That religion simply fails and doesn't work due to the fact that you haven't taken seriously the fact that you understand that you must stand in front of God your Lord. It's only after you took Vashivos Elevavecha, then finally you will finally and honestly stand b'fnei Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha, and that will be the reason why you will be consistent in your adhering to everything that he teaches you. What's Kechayla Shanichim Tzavcha Hayom? L'chayra, it means, according to the Rishon, all the mitzvahs that I taught you today. He taught them Kol HaTorah Kula, as you'll see in a minute. Now this will help not just for you, but also Vanecha. You will actually heed, not just you will heed it seriously, but also your children. Equals education will finally work. B'chol levavcha, with your total sense of emotion, b'chol nafshecha, with all your sense of self. Okay, at that point of time, v'shav Hashem elokecha eshvuscha, then God will return those people who have to be returned, equals the exiles, and he richamecha, and he will have compassion on you. V'shav, and he will return, v'kibetzcha, he will collect you, mikol ha'amim, from all these different nations. Hashem v'itzcha, Hashem Elokecha Shama, that God dispersed, your Lord dispersed you there. Imi yeni the chacha b'tzeh hashemayim, wherever your people will be, those who are pushed away and dispersed will be at the ends of the world, so to speak. Mishami kabetzcha, Hashem Elokecha, from there God, your Lord, will collect you. Mishami kachecha, and there he will take you. He will take you, v'aviacha, and he will bring you, who Hashem Elokecha el haaretz, asher Yeshua v'yisecha, to the land which your forefathers had inherited. V'yirishta, and you will inherit it. V'yitivcha, and it'll be good for you. V'yirbachama v'yisecha, it'll be even better for you than what's for your forefathers. At that stage, the final, after the kibbutz, so what we have here is a series of Yisurim, of Gullus, ultimately within Gullus, introspection, v'ashevaisa el vavecha, an idea of standing back up in front of God, your Lord, and then you will actually start taking it seriously. You will start adhering to what he has to say, both you and your children. Then it says that God will return you the dispersed, and bring you all back to Eretz Yisrael. And that's the second stage. And the third stage is Umol Hashem Elokecha Slavavcha, and that God will remove the callousness from your heart. You will actually be totally sensitive to God, not just be that you will stand with the cerebral understanding that I stand in front of God. That is stage number one. The final thing is the callousness of the heart and the emotions. You actually love God, which means have an obsessive desire for constant proximity of God, your Lord. Literally, that which it says in the mitzvah after the Hashem Elokecha, it will finally happen at the end of time. At that point of time, then all the curses that you had endured will now go back on your enemies, and those that hate you, that had pursued you. But you, Teshuv, you will revert. V'shamata b'koil Hashem, you would hear to the voice of God. V'asisa kol mitzvaysav, you will do all his mitzvah, his commandments. Asher nechim mitzavcha hayon. Now you look at this, sometimes you wonder. Look, so when we have experienced kibbutz galius. We have experienced kibbutz galius, and we have experienced when God took us to Eretz Yisrael. But yet somehow have we really experienced the V'shavta, the source of galius, V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha? What is the gvul? So Rav Kook discusses this in Orota Teshuva, and Rav Kook says that first and foremost, one has to recognize the fact that God is our Lord. It's a nice way of saying what you call Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim. We discussed it last week. That the Meiri points out that a person who does not do tshuva is a peirik oil malchus shamayim. He doesn't accept the sovereignty of God. And that's a Rosh Hashanah. These 40 days are the days of Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim. That the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is malchios. Therefore, tshuva is a prerequisite to become Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim. Because what does tshuva mean? I return to stand in front of God, my Lord. That's how I live. And I understand constantly, 24/7, that He is Hoive Kadman She'ein She'akol Mimenu B'Chefetz V'Yachaylis, and He is my Lord. That's what he wrote. That's what we learned last time around in the Meiri. Now here it says an interesting concept. Says there's going to be a tshuva preceding kibbutz galus. So how do we understand that? Well, hypothetically, you could say because the totality of kibbutz galus hasn't happened yet. We are missing Aseres Hashvatim. That is possibility one, bit hard to see it, because the Yeshayahu, the pasuk here, is he talking specifically about all the Aseres Hashvatim? Could be that when we're clear whether they even are going to come back or not, or that somehow they did come back already. Yirmiyahu zero. Whatever it be, So Rav Kook in Eretz Teshuva comes out with an idea, which is an important idea, and his idea is that basically returning to the fact that we are a nation and that we are a Jewish identity, not just, and God is the head of our identity, equals in order to make sure that God is your melech, you have to define first and foremost that you're a nation and not just a religion. Because if you're just a religion, you don't need a king, you need a pope. You need a bishop. The fact and first and foremost of the process of the tshuva of Ad Hashem Elokecha, that He is your Lord, must be, as we learned before in the Meiri, is Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemaim. So first you have to decide that you're a nation. So he takes for granted instantly the bare fact that Jews chose, finally, actually due to the Herzl's movement of Zionism, to re-embrace a national identity as Jews, not just a religion. As Adrabi writes over there, I remember reading in the memoirs of Herzl that even, we're not talking about the Frum, we're talking about the Reform, the Neologim, etc., the German Reform Synagogue, the Hungarian Reform Synagogue, all were anti-Zionism because they believed we don't have a national identity. We are Austro-Hungarians or Germans or Prussians, which are of a religious faith called Judaism. That's why they very much opposed Herzl at the time. If anything, the people that helped him more were Dafka. You want to know those parts in Orthodoxy which connected to him, the old, actually the Alta Litvicus, okay, Shmuel Bolivar, etc. If you want to talk historically, it was Dafka the Reform, and conservative didn't exist at that time. That Reform movement, which totally fought against Zionism. So the idea of reverting to a national identity is the first stage of Shiva Ad Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha. That's what he writes. Now, the truth of the matter is, I don't know how to deal with this, because at the end it doesn't say Tshuva Stam. The Lashon is V'shavta Ad Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha. It means you must stand with having a presence of God, your Lord, in front of you. Ad Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokecha, and thus it says V'shamata B'Kolo. You will take Him seriously. Now, I understand that during the Gullus we took very seriously the fact that we are a persecuted people. And that did generate a certain sense that we must stop thinking just in assimilated terms, but actually decide to regain our national identity, because if we're not going to, it's not going to work otherwise, which is what happened with Herzl, specifically post the Dreyfus affair. He had other ideas in the beginning, but that really clashed with everything, and said, no, we must reassert our national identity. There are people that run away quoting Herzl, but they somehow are not intellectually honest. The different phases in that person. That person originally wanted to solve the problem of the Jews by assimilation. Adrabah, let's succeed in assimilation. It's only due to the Dreyfus affair that he woke up and realized that assimilation won't work, that they have to go to the polar opposite. We have to regain our national identity. You have to proudly say, I am a Jew. No. So if Cook thinks this is V'shavta, this is the Kim of Tshuva before Geula, it is true, but I don't see how that fulfills the pasuk of Shavta Ad Hashem Elokecha V'Shamata B'Kolo, and only after the Shema Hashem Elokecha Shvuscha V'Yichamecha. In other words, the pasuk, the way it is over here, I don't see it yet. Unless we're going to say that the kibbutz goal is, if I'm talking pshuta shomika, is this the beginning of a process? Of course, it's the beginning of a process. That we know from the Gemara, that as soon as you see Eretz Yisrael is basically, it gives payers, and and cities are full and people are living and etc. and flourishing. This is a simon of Aschalta de Gula. It's not for the Gemara. I don't know how one can argue with that. But is this the key of this pasuk per se? Mistamah means to say there's going to be more. There's going to be more. Now, who are the people that God threw away, and now Nebuch they are nidachim, and God has to bring them back? It doesn't mean the comfortable Jews in North America, because the comfortable Jews in North America can get on a plane and come whenever they want. But what does it mean? I guess it means those Jews that are so far flung, they become terribly assimilated, that they don't even dream of coming back to Eretz Yisrael. They don't identify themselves as Jews at all, which is, I hate to say it. according to in certain continents, you're hitting 90%. And that's the pshat. There is going to be, we still have to go through a bigger crisis. This is why I hate to say this, if we understand the psukim carefully, until everybody will wake up. And then God will bring everybody, everybody will wake up. So we still have to wait. Do we see the beginnings of this? Yes, we're in a process, no question about it. But is this the end result? That would be childish to say. It doesn't make sense in the Chumash. Have we got the reality of Atov, Vanecha, B'chol Vavcho, B'chol Nafshecha yet? Or even in our religious circles, do we have at-risk children and children who, I think what's called unchosen? I saw a book on children often they're called the unchosen. Well, we have Nebuch the unchosen. So I hate to say it, doesn't seem to say that this pasuk is fulfilled yet. And that must take that account. So this is what he says. After we do, there will come the stage, and then God will bring everybody back. Everybody back. Okay, that's I guess that part of Eitivchavir B'cham Avisecha has not yet been fulfilled. And then we will finally have Amol Hashem Levachecha Levavcha. That's the next stage. Yes, I agree. So I think that if we look at the Chumash, we're still waiting. But what it says here is one important thing. So now let's go further. Now the pasuk continues. V'atot tashuv v'shamata b'kol Hashem v'asisa kol mitzvotav asher anochi mitzavcha hayom v'yisicha Hashem Elokecha b'chol maasei yadecha b'pri bitnecha b'pri be'amtecha pri ad masecha l'teva. You'll have multitudes. You'll have surplus of your parnasa, of children, of the animals you will have, of your abundance of crops. L'tayva ki yashuv Hashem lasus alecha l'tayv kasher sos al avisecha. So obviously the idea of surplus agricultural thing, and surplus parnasa. That means there will not be necessity of what you call people cashiering social security checks. There'll be surplus of everything. This is the siman. Why? Ki tishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha lishma mitzvaysev v'chaykosev aksuva b'sefer Torah hazeh. So this is what it has. We have a process we're in now, but we clearly see this process has still we don't know that we see where the goal is. Now, here is the pasuk in Aleph that I need. For this mitzvah, which I'm commanding you today, it is not. It's not wonderful. It's not impossible for you. It's not remote. It's not far. It's not as if something which I haven't given you already. That God says, if you go up to the heavens and take it, then you'll have something. No, it's already given to you. No, it was already came down from heaven, was given to you. It's not from across the ocean. And it will teach it to us, and we will do this. Why? It's very close to you. Why? Because it's really very accessible. In your mouth, in your emotions. All you need is you need your mouth and you need your heart in order to make yourself a person which you will do fulfill this. Now let's look at this carefully. So Rashi writes, what is this Kia mitzvah azos? What does it mean? So it's Rashi, Torah nesuna lachem b'ksav u'ba'al peh. You already received the Torah, both the Torah b'ksav and b'al peh. Now just get into it. So another Kia mitzvah azos is discussing the Torah. That's a cloud, the Torah that we command. For example, Kol mitzvah shonechim mitzavcha hayom. You have that also. The idea of a mitzvah means it's called the commandment, equals the body of commandment, the Torah. The Ramban, if you look in Surah Zion, disagrees with Rashi. And the Ramban writes, V'tam ki ha-mitzvah azot, and the reasoning behind the word ki ha-mitzvah azot, to which lo rechokahim, etc., al kol ha-Torah kula. It's going on the total Torah, as we just read in Rashi, is also written in Even Ezra, it's written in all the Rishonim. Vanachon, But the truth is, he says, here this critique. This is but it's like saying, but the truth is, there's an idea of kol ha-mitzvah. You do the word mitzvah means commandment, but kol ha-mitzvah, all the commandment. Now it's interesting. And I have no problem not saying kol ha-mitzvot. I can use the corpus of the Torah called mitzvah, the commandment, but then you add the word all of the commandments. Once you see the commandment as the basic dialogue between God and man, the commandment, well, this is kol ha-mitzvah. Aval ha-mitzvah zot is not going on the total Torah, but rather ala tshuva niskeret. On the tshuva aforementioned key, because when the pasuk said, if you look carefully, in the pasuk that we read before, in pasuk Aleph, when the pasuk said, "Ki ashivaisha el levavecha," you will take to heart, "V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha," which is pasuk base, mitzvah sheyitzava oisam la'asuskei. This is not a prophecy. This is a mitzvah that you should do it. In other words, according to the Ramban, it's very clear that he's not describing prophecy that it will happen. It's saying you will have to do that, and then these things will occur. Equal, should you not do it, they will not occur. According to Rashi, Rashi and all the Rishonim, the pasuk is not describing a command, but it's a prophesizing a phenomenon. It is going to happen. You will take it seriously, and thus you will return to God. Rambani says, no, even the pasuk v'hashay v'isel v'vecha is not a fait accompli, a prophecy that you will, this is how you will react to Gullus, but rather it means to say you are commanded to use the tsuris of Gullus to get there. You know, the tsuris of Gullus make it conducive for us to take life seriously, and you are now commanded to use that chance to do it. Very similar, the Miri wrote, you are commanded specifically around Rosh Hashanah to do tshuva more than other times because the time is conducive for that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you are commanded to do tshuva when you're in the pits of Gullus. Now that's a very interesting take on the pasuk, because the Lashon does not say teset tshuva, says v'shavta, and you will. Where do we find that's what it's describing what will happen? Where do you see there imperative? So he writes, mitzvah sheyitzaveh otanu la'asot kei. So v'shavta, I can somehow understand v'shavta, and you will return means and you must return. Now, if that's the case, in other words, he says v'shavta elvavecha, and you will. V'shavta can mean you will return or you must return. He takes the v'shavta elvavecha, and you must, not just you will take that, you must take the heart. Now, why would the Torah write in an ambiguous way? Why would the Torah write a language? I don't know enough digduk to argue with him to say that this is not an imperative. This is only a future. I'm willing to accept it's an ambiguous language, okay? Which the other Rishonim do not think so. But I'm willing to accept that the Ramban takes for granted this is a language which can be seen both as prophecy and both as commandment. So, but why is it written that way? Naturally, commandments are written in the language of commandment, of imperative. Tashuv, Taseh, Tochal, Taniach Tfilin, etc. So the answer is, when Lashon Benuni, it was written in this mid type of language. It doesn't say explicitly Taseh, it says, and you will, which can mean and you should, it could mean you will. And he says, why? Lirmos, this is an inference, Ba'aftacha, that not only is it a command, but it is also a promise. So what he does is as follows. He says that the pasuk is describing both a promise and a commandment. It's a promise that it will happen, but it's a commandment to do it, which is a very interesting halacha idea. There seems to be a promise that there will be, you will fulfill a mitzvah. That's a big problem, because any nevuah which is already preconceived that it will happen, it means to say, well, is the bechira? Do you have free will if the prophet says you're going to do it? And the answer is because he's not talking about any specific person. He's talking about overall as the nation, but each person has his free will to be part of the party or not. Very similar to what the Rambam writes in Teshuva. He asks, how is there free will with the Egyptians if Avraham Avinu already heard that they were going to be afflicted in Egypt. It says that the nation of Egypt will afflict them, but each specific Egyptian on his own had free will not to be part of that party. So the mitzvah seems to be Vishavta is a mitzvah on the Yachid, and Vishavta is Avtocha on the Rabbim. That's what we have to say. So the Vishavta goes on the Rabbim and on the Yachid. Now it's also very interesting because we know based on the Gemara and Megillah, whenever the Torah writes Lashon Yachid, it means, so to speak, on the Tzibur. Means each and every one of us. When the Torah writes Lashon Rabbim, it means in each person singularly. That's a klal. We learned that a few times. The Gemara and Megillah, Daf Lamed Amud Beis. Lashon Rabbim means to say L'kol Echad ve'Echad. Lashon Yachid means to say in context of being members of the nation. That's what it means. Okay. For example, by Sfir Sa'imer, it says a Lashon Sheva Shabbos Tisperu Chamishim Yoim. Okay, what is Tisperu Chamishim Yoim? That's a Lashon Rabbim. That goes to Kol Yachid v'Yachid. It's a mitzvah that every person has. It says Tisperu, that's Lashon Rabbim. Okay, Masha'en Kim by Yovel doesn't say Tisperu, it says Tispor. And that's a din on the nation. Therefore, it's a Lacham Bezdin. The Bezdin has to do the spirit. The klal is that's the case over here. It's very interesting because Vishavta is Lashon Yachid. Lashon Yachid implies that we're talking to the tzibur. So if you understand it, say promise is the promise on the tzibur. But if you understand it, say tzibur, you have a shtickle problem here. The truth of Vishavtem. It says Shavta b'Lashon Yachid. I'm pointing out this Pirush of the Ramban is very problematic. It doesn't work if you understand it's Lashon Yachid. Lashon Yachid is on the tzibur. Is the halacha of tshuva a din and the Yachid in context of being a member of the tzibur? Or is Lashon Yachid, or is or what? No, it's a law mitzvah called Echad ve'Echad per se, not because he's part of the tzibur. If we accept the Ramban that this Vishavta is talking about a tzibur, it means that the tzibur is each and every one of us in context of the tzibur. Now, what does that mean? And the answer is because let's recall, I'm trying to explain this Ramban, listen very carefully. We learned 2 weeks ago in the Meiri that a major drive for doing tshuva is because if you don't do tshuva, you're a pirate oil malchus shamayim. You remember the Lashon of the Meiri in the first source that we have, if he doesn't do tshuva in this period, ein lo chelek be'elokei Yisrael, which was parallel to the revolt of Sheva ben Bichri and David HaMelech that was found in the source Beis and Shmuel Beis Perek Beis. In other words, there's definitely an aspect of tshuva which has to do with the fact that you have walked away from the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you must return to the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I ask myself the question again. When you're Mekaba Ol Malchus Shemaim, is that you because your name is John Doe, you as a singular person, or is it you in context of the tzibur? Well, I'm going to daven Ma'ariv in another 45 minutes. You people have a bit more time than that. Okay, I'm laughing at Alan over here. He probably hasn't eaten breakfast. Sunday morning, man. Well, you didn't tell me. I'm almost surprised that you're back from shul.
It's a good thing I'm not in Hawaii.
Shabbos Sheni Shagolios. Your Shkamamin should be at 9:00. Okay. Anyway, but when you said Shema Yisrael, Avaya Lekina, Avaya Echad, what did you say? Lashon? What were you talking to? What does Shema Yisrael mean? Hashem Elokeinu is called Echad V'Echad B'Lashon Yachid. But what does Shema Yisrael mean? Who are you talking to exactly? You say it in the morning, you say it in the evening, probably you say it at night before you go to sleep. What is it? What are you talking to? What is Shema Yisrael? I understand Moshe Rabbeinu saying Shema Yisrael, but you're not Moshe Rabbeinu. What are you quoting that language of Shema Yisrael? Listen, who are you talking to exactly? You're talking to yourself? What does it mean when you say this? This is something which you probably asked many years ago. What does it mean? So obviously it means that you are awakening within yourself that aspect of we call of Jewish nationhood. as much as I am part of the nation, therefore I'm a Kabel Oil Malchus Shamayim. Why? Because Ein Melech B'loi Am. There's no such thing as a Melech without a nation. With greatest respect to my family, Baruch Hashem, I'm not a Melech on the family, I'm a father. Okay? The pshat is when you have Ein Melech Loi Am, but God wants man not just to be his children. We all love saying Avinu. You know, Avinu, we love doing that Avinu. Kerachim Aval Banim, yeah, and all that. And sometimes we forget you're going to say Slicha soon, you know, brother, we are your servants and we rebelled. Well, if we are servants and we are your children and we have turned our backs, you know, well, what are we? We're both. We somehow can't live comfortably with the Avodim Anachnu. We're very comfortable with the Avinu. We sing Avinu Malkeinu, and the stress in our mind is not about the Malkeinu, it's about the Avinu. Think of it. You're not even comfortable with describing yourself as a slave. Im kavadim tirachamei, im kabanim tirachameni keracham aval banim, im kavadim einenu lechatluyas achid chanenu. In other words, there's a natural affinity between father and child. That's an easy thing to waken up because it doesn't demand too much. You're a son of a father, even if you don't behave like a mensch. It's a machlokes in Gemara where the banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem is only oiseh ma'aseh banim and not oiseh ma'aseh banim. That's a machlokes of Yehuda and Rabbanan. And normally in Divrei Haggadah, you can say, I don't know, maybe the halacha is even, one or the other. But the Rashba and Teshuva writes explicitly on this. He says that just like the klal, all the normal halacha is that halacha should be dafka oiseh ma'aseh banim because the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Afal Pikein, here we don't paskin that way. He writes before, even this is Shulchan Divrei Haggadah. This is not the halacha. This is now. What does halacha mean? What's the nafkamina ladina? The text of the language of halacha found already in the Goinim. For example, one example in Rabbeinu Hanan, but B'Kamad of Dawud, also in Oitzah Goinim, there halacha doesn't have to mean something which is what you would call the law. It means to say what is the normative, accepted understanding of religion. There's a machlokes in the first Mishnah of Bekama. What does the word mav'eh mean? Does mav'eh mean adam hamazik or mav'eh means shen hamazik? A machlokes Rav Shmuel. Rabbeinu Hanan writes explicitly. There's no nafkamina la'alacha. Afal pikein, the halacha is that it means adam hamazik. It means adam hamazik. You just told me there's no nafkamina la'alacha, and you tell me the halacha because the word halacha means to say the road that we go on. Normative way of the highway of religion. The highway of religion means normative religion. This is the doctrine which we accept. Lamashal, Levi says there's no more Mashiach kval chlubi mei Chizkiah. But normative religion is accepted not like Levi. And today, if a person will say there's no Mashiach, he's a kaifer be'ikr. You don't have to sit shiva on him. That's me'ikr adin. You understand? So there's certain things. So many times when you talk about what is normative religion, it depends on what was Rabbi Sena Rishonim decided, not what the local rabbi in Bnei Brak decides. That is not what is considered normative religion. But what Rabbi Sena Rishonim would kaveya, that's kaveya. I say this for a purpose because they use the word apikoros very easy today, and any person who doesn't agree with you and thinks that I don't know what, automatically who knows what. I don't mean that. That's not Judaism. Judaism allows definitely a rainbow of views, but there's a normative view which we decide based on Rabbi Shena Rishonim as to why it's a topic for itself. But that's the way it is. Therefore, we understand that the normative religion is that we're banim even einum oisim ma'aseh banim. When we don't behave, we're still banim. But avodah, you can't be an eved if you're pyrik oil. That's a steerer. You're a married b'malchus, a chayv sayif. Supposed to be beheaded. So that's why I say it's very easy. Everyone loves singing Avinu Malkeinu. You know what I mean? Because they think about the Avinu aspect. You don't chop. When you said Malkeinu, you're saying that you're a slave. And you're Makabel Oil Malchus Shamayim. Because if you're not, you're an eved. And the problem is, I don't think that too many people are very much aware of what they're saying there. And the mitzvah Yom of Rosh Hashanah is to be makabel, not the Avinu aspect of religion, but the Malkeinu aspect of religion. Means to say, I'm an Eved. That's what we have to say. V'shavta ad havaya lokecha, according to the Meiri, means to say, returning to Yud Kevak Elokecha, that's Malchus. As we once discussed in the name of the Ramban and Parshas Yisro described it. Anoichi Yud Kevecha Elokecha, that is Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. Well, if that's the case, there's no such thing as Malchus without a tzibur. There's no such thing as my private melech. There's me in context of the nation, me as an aspect of the nation, I'm a Kabbalah as a prat, as an aspect of the nation, Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. So a prerequisite for any Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim demands you to have a strong national identity. And that's what you said when you say Shema Yisrael, you're awakening within yourself your national identity, that you are all Avdei HaMelech, and the Melech is that. That means God, Judaism, or our covenantal relation with God, is the cultural context of my existence. A very important statement. That's what Shema Yisrael means, by definition. Kum tois lefi zeh, the V'shavta ad havaya lokecha equals, you will reclaim Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. Who's it talking to? It's talking to Yisroel, Shavta Einachami, each and every one of us, in context of the Rabbim. That's why it's written B'Lashon Yachid. This was my question. How can you possibly say it's written B'Lashon Yachid, which means on the tzibur? And it's a mitzvah. The mitzvah is on a Yachid. It's not a mitzvah on tzibur. The answer is a mitzvah. A part of the mitzvah is that he should go back to have his tzibur identity. That is the halacha of Rosh Hashanah. The halacha of Rosh Hashanah is to see yourself as part of something, not just your own private something. Okay, this is that's the pshat in this Ramban. So that's v'shavta ad havaya lokecha v'shamata b'kolei. Zok the Ramban. So now I want us to understand that this is obviously, according to Ramban, he says this is a mitzvah. Now, according to all the other Rishonim which do not learn that way, now how do I know Mefurish that the Rambam does not learn that way? The Rambam does not learn that way because the Rambam writes Mefurish in source Chet. No, let's finish the Ramban first. The Ramban in source Zayin continues, V'atam lomar ki im yed nidacha b'ksei hashamayim v'ata b'yad ha'amim tuchal lashuv el Hashem v'lasot kechol hashonichim etzavcha hayoyim. It will enable you, because of the tzoros, will push you towards religious consciousness, and you will be able to do it. Because now it won't be far from you. Now, what's the key? He says, if you will be in the hands of your captors, you will be able to. And he means say, even if you will be. Does he mean say because you will be? How do you read this? Ki im yeni decha b'tzei hashamayim v'ata b'yad ha'amim tuchal lashuv el Hashem lasot kechol hashonechim tzavcha hayom. Why? Ki ein hadavar nifla v'rachok mimcha aval karov hu elecha ma'od lasoto b'chol eit u'b'chol makom. What he's saying is, the pasuk is saying that, it doesn't say, he learns the pasuk not that the golus is conducive for the mitzvah, but adrabah, the pasuk, even in Golus, you could be able to do this because this is something which is within your capabilities, whether you're a Golus or whether you're not. Totally reverses the whole mashmos of the pasuk. Okay? He continues and writes, what's beficha? Ubevavcha and la'asoisai. It seems to be a mitzvah which has within it an idea of oral expression, the vavcha, something to do with conviction and heart, and lasisai, and an action. So what is it? So he says, if it's mitzvahs ba'alma, I know there's mitzvah shebalev, there's mitzvah shebavachshava, there's mitzvah shebadibur, that I understand. The Torah has many of them. There's parshas that you have to say, that's beficha. Bevavcha v'aftas Hashem elokecha, la'asoisai, put on tefillin. But when we talk about Teshuva, where are the three aspects of Beficha, B'vavcha, L'Asoisai in Teshuva? Zok the Ramban. She'ismadus avoinim v'esvoid avoina avoisam b'fiyem. You must be mismada. You must confess, or rather acknowledge. I would say, you must acknowledge. Comes from the lashon of moida. You must acknowledge. I think we learned that in the past in Hilchos Tainus, where the Rambam there explains what's the idea of a Tainus Sibur, because you have to look and see, well, the same rut we're in today started 2,000 years ago, and we haven't changed what caused the rut, and therefore we're still in the rut. Called Darsh, Nivna, Abayis B'Yamav, Ki'ilu Sorfoy. That was the Lashon Rishalmi, not Kilo Nechra B'Yamav, as if they destroyed it themselves. That was the Lashon of the Rishalmi I quoted when we learned that Rambam in Hilchos Tainus. Okay, you destroyed the Mikdash because you didn't fix it, because the same reason it got burnt is not being rebuilt. Okay, so let's understand. So that's and the Rambam continues. That's the pshat and the vidui. Bisvadu is avoinim. We say I am confessing my sins and saying they are the same as my forefathers, and that's why I'm still in the same mess. So when you say avanachna, what you're saying is you're not just sticking a bad mark on your forefathers. You're saying you're doing this as a legacy. I haven't changed. Nothing has changed. That's what you're saying. It's a very important thing understanding when you say vidui. Okay, especially now when slichus is coming around the corner. Okay, this is what you're saying. So you have to be misvadis, avoinam. That's the din of vidui. Vidui is not to say that I did sins, but to understand I'm in a rut, which is an old rut. Now, this is what the Ramban takes for granted. That's why you say, you don't just say it yourself, you must connect it to the past. It means when you read yourself, you know there's no Beis HaMikdash now. You read the Psukim in Yeshayahu, and you read the Psukim in Amos, and you read the Psukim in Yirmiyahu and Yecheskel, and you realize why there's no Mikdash, and that's them, and that's me today. That's part of Vidui. V'yashum b'libam el Hashem, a return emotionally to the presence of God, as we discussed in the past. That means so that is b'ficho b'lvavcha v'yikabla aleim hayoim haTorah, and you must accept upon yourself now la'asoisa l'doros. What is it when we say Kabbalah la'asid? The Ramban is very careful. It doesn't mean accepting that you will not do this avera. Look at this. Normally we have Charata, Aziva, Charata, Vidui, and Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah? So Kabbalah, people understand means I make a commitment not to do this Avera. The Ramban has a different take. You take upon yourself now Kabbalah's oil, the Kabbalah's oil Torah. You again have to say Nasiv and Nishma. It's an act of conversion. It's an act of recommitment. You blessed up on the first commitment. You must now be Mekabel Torah, not just for yourself, but L'Dairosh. Now, where's he coming from there? Because the pasuk says Mefurish, Ata uva ne'echad v'chol 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 nafshecha. It means to say, and he understands that was when the pasuk said in pasuk Aleph, V'shamata b'kolo k'chol asher nechim tzavcha shama v'shafta, etc. That's pasuk base. Ramban says that is what it means. You're mekabel for you and your children. This is Nasiv and Nishma. Nasiv and Nishma means we will accept the covenant, everything you told us until now. According to the Ramban and Nishma, we will take upon ourselves a commitment to adhere to whatever you will say in the future. Okay, so whatever I'm aware of now, I will do, and whatever will happen in the future, I will submit to the sovereignty of God. So we have kama v'kama chidushim coming out of this Ramban. Chidush number one, that he takes for granted there's a mitzvah, a say of doing tshuva. That includes, according to the Ramban, a vidui of what? Now, since this is the source, so then we look at the psukim and see what it entails. It says it has to be a vidui of him and in context of his forefathers. You look it up in Rambam, you won't find it. But he says it. He brings this pasuk, and it has to be. And when he said that's called, so that's vidui. And what's called V'lashiv Yeshuv El Hashem, you return to the presence of God. That's Mefurish. It doesn't mean repentance. That's a funny word. It means returning to the presence of God. That's a davar pasha. It means again. So this is Kabbalas Ol Malchus. Not just the Ramban. That's also found in other psukim. Shuv Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha, until the presence of Hashem Yud Kei Vavkei, your Lord. That's not a question. The word repentance is a fallacy. I don't know who made it up, but it messed up the whole idea. Okay? It means to say, to get a new mindset. And then the third thing, which is most important, is you have to have a re-kabbalah satira. You have to recommit your commitment of religion. It doesn't mean promise God, shalei echta oid, etc. That's how the Rambam says it. You have to have such a commitment that God knows that where you're holding at the moment, your taka will not sin anymore. No, he says much stronger than that. It says it's nasa v'nishma because you have to commit also for you. It's a l'dayros. What's the nasa? The nasa v'nishma means the dayros. This is very beautiful because we're all talking about me in context of the nation. L'dasa Ramban, it's Lashon Yachid. In context of the nation means to say I'm accepting a melech, leave, a l'dayros. Me in context of the total nation, the nation is its over, its hoiva, and its asid. And if I don't take it as a commitment for its over, its hoiva, and its asid, that's not a kabbalas ol malchus shamayim. And that's what Teshuva is according to the Ramban. So it's the kama v'kama hilchos gvirta we learn from this Ramban, which are quite chamuros, which are quite not. Well, it's a something deraisa, so you should be chayshish for this. But this idea, this is Dasa Ramban. Now, obviously, we understand that the Rambam does not bring anywhere there's a commandment of doing tshuva, as we pointed out. Adrab in source Ches, when he quotes this pasuk, he sees it totally only as a promise. Where is this? Look in source Ches. Kol nevuim kulam tzivu ala tshuva. Does he write that the Kadosh Baruch Hu was mitzav ala tshuva in the Torah? No. Kol nevuim kulam tzivu ala tshuva. They commanded. What does it mean? They commanded. Now, the lashon of commandment, as we discussed in the past, does not have to mean commandment per se. It could also mean they instructed. How do I know this? I know this, for example, no one thinks that Shuvi Yisrael Ad Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah medivrei Kabbalah, which means the equivalent of a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. No. What is the idea? For example, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Sanhedrin, where it said the din is that a yachid mumche can dan yachidi. That's the halacha. If you're Moshe Feinstein could do a din Torah about meikra din, even as a yachid, he didn't need another two people with him. Okay, that's the halacha. The Rambam says va'afal pikein mitzvahs chachamim, that he should not do it alone. Because what does the pasuk say? Mishnah say in Pirkei Avos, al tiyeh dan yachidi ki ein dan yachidi ela kadosh baruch hu. That's nothing more than an Eitzah Toiva d'Rabbana. It's not a din, okay? And the Rambam calls that, all of Pirkei Avos, he calls it mitzvahs chachamim. It's a Rambam in Hilchos Sanhedrin, where he writes this mefurish. He uses the word mitzvah in context of Pirkei Avos. No one thinks that Pirkei Avos is moral and ethical teachings. They're very important. They're part of our value system, but definitely not to say that it's a mitzvah, either d'oraisa or d'rabbanan. We're not koifa on that. If it be a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'rabbanan, then Bezin can coerce you to fulfill it. The answer is not a mitzvah in context of an imperative, whether biblical imperative or a rabbinic imperative. It's a rabbinic. It's what you call a value that the Chazal taught us about. So it's a mefurish Rambam. I mean, I should read this because it's a big. I said this multiple times, but here it's a mefurish Rambam which writes that. So let me just show it to you. Here it is. Let me find it here for a moment. Right, Perik Beis and Hedron Halacha Yud Beis. Well, let me find it for a minute. Here it is. Excuse me, Halacha Yud Aleph. Afal pi she'u mutar to what? To be dan yechidi mitzvat chachamim hu sheyoshiv imo achirim sharei amru al tiyeh dan yechidi she'en dan yechidi ela echad. It's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And the lashon of the Rambam is mitzvahs chachamim. So once again, this is one of the multitude of rayos I've bought, that the concept of mitzvah does not have to mean religious imperative, whether it's a biblical or rabbinic. It can also mean a value system like Pirkei Avos. So this is what's written over here. So the lashon of the Rambam in source Ches is calling it im kulam tzivu ala tshuva. It means yes, they commanded as a value, as a religious value. It doesn't mean a mitzvah. There's no the Rambam doesn't write that Kodesh Baruch Hu tziva, Torah tziva, because there is no such pasuk because he doesn't learn like the Ramban. No one learns like the Ramban. The Ramban's a tremendous chiddush. But tziva, tshuva is a value. What is the value? I told you what the value is. The value is because the pasuk says you're supposed to be mekabel ol malchus shamayim. Every sin that we do because we turned our backs to kabel ol malchus shamayim. So the mechayev is because God said even Anochi Hashem Elokecha Adrabah, even Anochi Hashem Elokecha was not written in a language of imperative. It was a statement. The Rambam said the only reason he calls it a mitzvah because the Gemara in the end of Makkah calls it a mitzvah, but the language is a language of statement. Let's put this on the table. You know, it's written, this is a fait accompli. This is God. Accept him, then you do the mitzvahs. And this is what it is. So tziva la tshuva, ve'en yisol nigolim ela b'tshuva. He says before, the geula will only happen due to tshuva. Now, this is pretty rough. Ukvayiv tichat Torah shesof Yisrael asos tshuva b'sof galutan equals, until then they're still within the galus. U'b'sof galutan, how does he read the parsha that we just read in Dvarim Lamed? Umiyad hem nigalim shene'amar vayaki yavo elecha kol dvarim v'shavtat Hashem Elokecha v'shav Hashem Elokecha. How does he learn the parsha? He writes mefurish that this is called sofa galut. We will do tshuva and shavtat Hashem Elokecha. That is called sof geulatam. And then finally there will be the total geula, which is Mashiach ben David. So sof geulatam could also be what you call aschalta de geula. I have no problem with that because the Gemara brings simanim of aschalta de geula, which, as I said before, if the trees, if the fields grow bounty and the mountains are full of trees, and at Yisrael the earth rejuvenated itself and welcomes the children, this is a sim of aschalta de geula. But the Rambam describes that in context of the broad galus. This is still called sof galutam. So the Rambam clearly writes the situation when it's called the Gemara, which the Gemara calls aschalta de geula. The Rambam calls that sof geulatam, sof galutam. So it really doesn't matter. I find people nitpicking. Is it aschalta geula, sof galus? I always laugh. I says, well, according to Rambam, it's sof galus. According to the Gemara, it's aschalta de geula. Obviously, it means it's synonymous. So what's the difference? There's no theological meaning in that. It's God's running the world, and we are in a process. So he writes, but Rambam writes beforish that miyad hem nigalim equals that now, even in the situation we're in the moment, we're still in sof geulatam, and that will happen. He says, which is the pashas of the pasuk. This is the way we explained it. Yes, there's still a long way to go. Okay, and this is what we're talking. So the Rambam writes beforish it's a haftacha, and it's only b'sof galutan. According to the Ramban, it's a mitzvah b'chol eis u'b'chol zman, and also b'sof galutan. If hypothetically this was a mitzvah b'chol eis u'b'chol zman, the language of the Rambam here would be totally not appropriate. It's very clear that the Rambam disagrees with the Ramban in this. So whether it is or is not a biblical imperative, it's a das yochid of the Ramban versus Kol Rabbi Shena Rishonim. Specifically, Rambam here, which is explicit. It's not a mitzvah saseh, but as we discussed in the past, many things that Kodesh Baruch Hu expects you to do because of a value system, not because of an imperative. We discussed in the past. There's no reason to reiterate that. That's a davar pasha. And the reason lies in one thing which is important. What did Chazal say when they said, the halacha says you can judge alone if you're a mumcha. Moshe could do a psak din Torah without anybody with him. But mitzvahs chachamim was him to add two people to him. Why? Because of a moral value, because you're showing that you're not God. Basically, by being dan yechidi, it's an expression of haughtiness. The lashon she'ein dan yechidi ela echad is only the supernal one can be dan yechidi. You don't have it in yourself. If you think you have, what's the problem? And if you do, you're basically overstepping. It's a question of gaiva. It's a question of not knowing your station, not understanding your limitations. You can be the biggest guy in the door. There's still limitations. You have to deliberate with people. It's a cloud. Here, take it from me. I'm an old horse. I still talk and learn with 80-year-old pumpkins, and sometimes I get clarification from them, from the most naive questions. It suddenly hits you like a light bulb. Well, yeah, so it's good to learn with pumpkins, because somehow they illuminate something. It's the truth. I know it. So that's what he's saying here. So this I understand. So what is this halacha? So this is a value. It's an important value. It's called mitzvahs chachamim. So what does it mean? What does God want? God says legally it's okay, but you should understand yourself. He wants you to recognize this as a moral value. There's no ish in the Torah of gaiva. If you find it, I'll eat my hat. But the Torah describes that, man, if you're a balgaiva, you're a disgusting person. So I have to tell you that it's usher. You're disgusting. What do you want? So here is the same thing. Al dan yechidi. You're allowed to be dan yechidi. The din is a din, but you're a balgaiva. You know what Ritzna balgaiva ein aniva hu yecholim doda b'kfifa achas. God says, I can't live with you in the same room. So when God doesn't make a commandment but a value, he expects you to internalize that as a value. What I'm trying to say, this is the most important thing. We're in Elul. Forget the idea of commandment. You should naturally be drawn to want to return to a religious consciousness. And if you don't do it naturally because of an inborn value, because it's been internalized in you, that's why you're a parik al malchus shamayim. The chachma is to become an eved b'teva. That you should want to live with God consciousness, and that's why it's not a mitzvah; it's expected. Okay, so this is about it. That's enough for today. I think we still can convene Erev Rosh Hashanah l'chayra. No, when's Rosh Hashanah? When is Rosh Hashanah? Wednesday and Thursday? No, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Oh, so Sunday we can still learn. So the Sunday before Rosh Hashanah, we can still learn. Good. Great seeing you all. So meet again.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Bye.